Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org. We're asking for your help to share stories from all of Idaho's 44 counties, like this one on the Spencer Opal Mines, where we learned about their unique pink opals.
The pink is from an iron and manganese deposit. Like typically what you would see that turns those beautiful pools colors in Yellowstone is what gives our opal those fancy background colors.
You can send your ideas to Idaho Matters at boisestate.edu and then listen for our Idaho 44 project weekdays at noon and 8 on Idaho Matters. More Idaho Matters now from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News. I'm Gemma Gaudette. Have you been daydreaming about buying your own small farm? I mean, maybe you want to raise some goats. Maybe you want to plant some artichokes. Maybe you've bought an acre or two and you want to put that dream into reality. Small acre farms are more and more popular, but it turns out it isn't as easy as it looks. That's where the University of Idaho Extension Office comes in. For a couple of decades, they've been teaching the nuts and bolts of everything from irrigation, soil health, planting landscapes, and introducing animals to your small acreage, and they do it with conservation in mind. It is not living off the land, it's living on the land, and this year's series of workshop is about to begin. So here to tell us how to make small acreage farms work are Cheyenne Fisher, an extension educator with the University of Idaho Extension in Kenyon County, and Ariel Agenbrod, an area extension director with U of I Extension in Ada County. I want to welcome both of you to the program today.
Thank you.
Hello.
Ariel, let me start with you. My understanding is that this all started back in 2002. So what's the goal of this workshop?
Thank you, Gemma. Yes, Living on the Land began in Idaho in 2001 using a curriculum that was co-created with University of Nevada Extension. And the whole focus is to help folks living on 1, 2, 5, 10 acres figure out what they've got, in terms of their natural resources and their potential, and make the most of it by understanding their soil, their water, their plants, the basics of incorporating gardens, landscapes, livestock, so that they can live out that rural dream that brings most of them to choosing this lifestyle.
So Cheyenne, who should be taking this type of course?
Honestly, anyone who has a small acreage or has recently moved to the area with a small plot of land, or just really has that dream of changing their property and wanting to learn how to do that in the most efficient way. So really just small acreage landowners are who our target audience is.
So Ariel, some people might think that a course like this is about homesteading, but that's not necessarily the case, correct?
Correct. This is our sort of first step into that rural lifestyle. Certainly, anybody interested in homesteading would get a lot out of this course, but this really starts at the very basics. How do you get your water? Do you have a well? Are you on some kind of, other municipal water system? Do you know the safety of that water? What is your soil like? What is your land suitable to support? What is your zoning? What are you allowed to do, whether you're allowed to have animals or erect buildings or things like that. So we're really getting at the basis of stewarding your land and your property and making the best choices for that land. Later on, you decide that you want to grow all your own food, or you might want to start a small farm business. We have other programs for that help you get to that level, but this one is just really about learning about your land, taking care of it for yourself and future generations, and figuring out what are the best fits for your land. What will your land support, and what would be best use for it.
So Ariel, I would think a lot of people buy a small property and they really want to create some kind of farm. However, you found that maybe their vision of what they want can be a little bit vague or maybe a little unrealistic. I mean, for example, when I was 12, my mom thought it'd be a great idea to move us out to the country and have this little small farm. My parents did that. 9 months later, we moved back because, expecting your kids who grew up in the city to, help with the garden and the farming, not a great plan. Um, I'm not saying other people are like that, but that was my experience. So, Ariel, um, again, that was an unrealistic vision of the land. So, what is the first step? How do you help people learn what their property can do?
Well, and that is actually not unusual. Um,
Oh, okay.
that happens a lot. Well, because you've got this romantic ideal of it, and then you get there and you realize you've got 5 acres of goat heads or something, and it's a lot
Hmm.
of work. So we start even on the very first night with a little bit of goal setting and really taking just a no holds barred approach to looking at what are the strengths and weaknesses on your property, what are the problems you know about. What are your goals? Is your goal to just enjoy this property and spend time there? Is your goal to make it productive? And we try to work them through making really small step goals that are going to be attainable in the near term, and then looking at the long view. What is their future vision? And throughout the whole course, we're hopefully getting them closer to being able to make decisions that get them to that vision, without having them just throw out, get out of it and say this is too hard. We want there to be those
Mm.
manageable steps to reaching their goals, and we really work on that throughout the whole class. Maybe they're drawing maps of their property, they're inventorying their resources, they're visiting with others, they're finding out who their resource providers are in other agencies and organizations in the state, and then they're solving the problems that they might have, be they weeds or pests or water.
So, Ariel, I would think that figuring out what your couple of acres can support, right?
Yeah.
Because it might be where, well, I want to raise goats, but maybe you don't have the land for that. I mean, maybe your land would support something else. If
Yeah.
you can help them figure that out, does that lead to a better understanding of how much time and maybe even money that, this land might need?
Absolutely. So one of the things that's included in the course is a soil test. So everyone gets a soil test back. So then they learn like, all right, well, these are the kinds of crops or plants or pasture that would, be supported on this land. We have a whole class on fencing. What does fencing cost? What do goats need versus sheep? And Cheyenne is laughing
Mm.
because these are the things that really are make it or break it when it comes to making those kinds of choices. And our goal is to avoid them having too many animals that are degrading the land, and then they can't care for them, and then they don't know what to do. We want them to go in with their eyes wide open and make those best choices. And so a lot of it is driving them to find the answers to those questions with our guidance. But every journey is going to be individual for that participant.
Yeah. So Cheyenne, I mean, one of the I think the mistakes that my parents made was assuming that 5 kids from the city were going to actually be willing to help. Um, so that vision just went away. But with that said, I mean, what else do you teach? I mean, Ariel just said things like fencing. I mean, that sounds kind of boring, but as you said, it's make or break. So Cheyenne, what about things like water rights, water quality, soil fertility? I mean, how important are those things in this course?
I think they're extremely important. One of the best classes that we do is probably the water rights and the zoning. A lot of folks come to those small acreages wanting to have this beautiful pasture and they don't have water and they didn't know that. And now they do. And now they know where to look for it or how to get that. Or they know, okay, now I can't get water. So what do I do? What plants do I need to plant now? How do I work with this? And so those classes, the water rights, the zoning, I think those are, yeah, they may be boring, but once you really look at what you have, you can start deciding, okay, now what do I have? What can I do? The zoning, especially for people who want to own animals, is really important because there's some zones in Ada County where you aren't allowed to own like a hoofed animal. So you can't even have a miniature sheep or goat if that's what you want. You can only do like chickens or rabbits. So it's really important to know those little boring details because in the long run, it could save you quite a bit of headache. Even if you haven't bought the property and you learn about that, then you can be
Hmm.
like, okay, now I'm going to change my plans or I got to look somewhere else. So I think those boring classes are probably the most important ones for them to take.
They always are. So Cheyenne, you mentioned raising animals. So let's say you've got this piece of land, you can have a hoofed animal. Um, I would assume there is a difference in raising like a goat versus a llama. So do you dive into things like that as well? Like what is the best animal for your land?
Yeah, so I'm the livestock educator, and I actually have a whole presentation on the pros and cons of raising animals, and also kind of what you need to raise that animal. So we do dive into kind of like the nutrition and how you take care of them, husbandry, like best type of barn to have, best type of fencing, like Ariel was saying. So yeah, we definitely dive pretty deep into the animal section. I get a lot of feedback on that. It's a lot, but it was really interesting to learn. So it's a pretty big presentation, mainly just because there are so many animals that people could potentially be raising. I've tried to go into the amount of space you need. A lot of folks want
Mm.
a bunch of cows, but you only have an acre. So we kind of need to start thinking about how much land we have and how many animals our land can support. So that's another topic that we touch on for livestock.
So Ariel, talk us through when the workshop starts and how long it lasts.
Great. Well, we're very timely because the workshop series starts on Thursday evening of this week. It's a 12-week series. It goes from this Thursday, January 8th to March 26th. It's on Thursday evenings, and it's held here in our University of Idaho Extension Ada County office on Glenwood, right by Hawk Stadium and the fairgrounds. And as last count, we still had, I think, 2 slots open. So that would
Wow.
include 4 people. So we sell tickets, or we enroll people by the pair, and it can be partners, husband and wife, parent and child, neighbor, but 2 people get to take the class for that one price. And yeah, and it's like I said, it's registering right now. We still have a little room left.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation. I've learned a lot. So I appreciate your time today. We've been speaking with Cheyenne Fisher, an extension educator with the U of I Extension in Canyon County, and Ariel Egenbrod, an area extension educator with U of I Extension in Ada County. We've been discussing their Living on the Land workshop. It starts this Thursday. There's still room, so we're going to put a link on our website, boisestatepublicradio.org. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
Looking for another podcast to listen to? Check out The Nature of Idaho from our partner station KISU in Eastern Idaho. Join hosts Peter Pruitt and Dr. Leaf Tapanilla as they share fascinating stories from the Gem State's great outdoors, celebrating Idaho's wildlife, landscape, and natural wonders. That's The Nature of Idaho from KISU. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.